Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. We are super excited to be presented by FanDuel. Going to have a great time in this episode of the Big Ten Huddle with Around the Big Ten. We have 3 guests from around the Big Ten to talk through 3 questions in 30 minutes, but you know us here, we set a time frame and we typically go over it. So if we go over it, it is what it is. Just deal with it. It's more content for you, all right? Stop complaining. We're going to have a great time going through it all. We have Rajiv here with us. We have he's a Wisconsin fan. We have Kellen, a Washington fan, and Kevin, a UCLA fan, to talk through different topics, questions, things like that in the Big Ten. I'm going to go ahead and let these guys go around the horn and they can introduce themselves, tell you where that you can find their podcast at. Rajiv, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so the Bucky Report is a podcast. You can find it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm also a regular contributor to Locked On Badgers.
Awesome. Dark and Night, you can find that Twitter handle at the Dark and Night, part of the Sound of Siren podcast, and you can find it anywhere where, streaming is available.
Kevin Belagi, excited to represent Bruinsource on here. We are at Bruinsource on Twitter, X, whatever you call it these days. Our podcasts are on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We try to get them out in the early parts of the week.
There we go. So you have the lineup here. We're going to have a great time going through it all and answering these questions. So guys, let's just get right into it. All right. So our first question, going to deliver you guys a softball. Now remember though, there is one rule on this show, and that is you can only be a homer one time. Okay. Kevin, I know it's going to be super hard for you to be a homer, man. You're going to have to hold back this entire episode. I get it. But you guys can only be a homer one time. That means a positive answer about your team. Of course, if you want to add in or something like that at the end, I'm not going to hold you to that.
How many negative answers about your team?
I get it. But we'll go ahead. We'll start this first question with Rajiv. Rajiv, who is the biggest surprise in the Big Ten? Coach, team, player, whatever you want to say. Who is the biggest surprise in the Big Ten so far this year?
Listen, for me, I hate to say this because I really don't like how this team is being successful. And it makes me angry. But I got to give it to Kurt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, I just feel like that Illinois game was just jaw-dropping. I mean, honestly, to see them just destroy a really good Illinois side who I was high on before the season started. And I was one of those guys that thought, okay, Mendoza's a good quarterback, but Kurt Cignetti's not going to do this again. He's not going to come back into the conference and start dominating teams again and again. And I still, for the record, don't fully believe in them because one of these moments the floor is going to drop out on Indiana. But I have to give credit where credit is due. The trenches is where they continue to just win games, right? And obviously, they went out, they got Mendoza. He's firing bullets everywhere. They've got incredible receivers. They just have such a complete team. And I have to get that. I give that all that credit to Kurt Cignetti. Meanwhile, my team doesn't do that well, and I don't have that coach, right? So I have to give it to Cignetti because in this day and age, second year in the league, he's probably going to go to a second playoff in as many years. Like that, there is something to be said for that. And while some people might not call it a surprise, I do because I really thought they were going to struggle. Now, again, they still got some tough games on their schedule. I think the Iowa game, they escaped, right? Like that was not easy for them, but you've got to give credit where credit is due. And I can't understand how this continues to happen. I don't understand why my team can't do the things that they can do. But as much as it pains me to say this, they have been a big surprise. Kudos to them. They deserve all the credit in the world. Their fans are on cloud nine. They live in like la la land, but I understand why. Meanwhile, the 3 other guys on this podcast are living a rough life.
For me, I honestly, going into the year, I knew this team was young, but to see the fight and the growth from Maryland, I think it's been huge. Malik Washington, as a true freshman, has looked like a revelation. Looks like a kid that has really, sky's the limit for him. Mike Locksley has an athletic, defense, which is underrated, I believe, in the conference as well. So we'll see how they do this weekend. Seeing who they play. But they're an exciting team to watch, explosive, and like I said, as young as they are, playing up to 6 freshmen on the defensive side of the ball alone, to see them kind of grow week by week and the flow they're in has been really impressive.
Well, Maryland was going to be my pick, so I'll talk about them like real briefly, but then I'll maybe pick another one. I think the preseason win totals for Maryland was like 4.5, if I remember correctly, right? And they're at 4 now, and they got 2 real big games these next 2 weeks at home. They got Washington at home, they got Nebraska at home, and who knows what happens if you can get one of those, right? And where it goes from there. Malik Washington has definitely been a surprise. This was supposed to be a really young team, a rebuilding team. Different one, I guess I'll go, and I'll maybe go really against the grain here. I expected Purdue to look pretty miserable. Like more miserable, as miserable as us. Now, UCLA surprised me in other ways this year, right? Like that's been another thing. Like I've been surprised at UCLA in other ways this year. Purdue's offense seems functional. It seems like a functional unit that, they're 2-2. Going to be hard to crack out a bowl game, but for that kind of a team and what they were coming into this year, you're not looking to win a ton of games in year one. You're looking to see, is there something functional? Is there something that we can move towards? It looks like, Barry Odom, that offense. It looks like it's something you can build on.
Yeah, I think all of you guys make great points. I mean, Rajiv, to you, like I thought Indiana would be probably 9-3, 10-2 this year. Now they could still go 10-2, but I had Indiana fans in my comments being like, "We're going 12-0," and I was like, "Guys, chill. Like, okay, you had a great season last year. Just chill a little bit. If you go 12-0, great." But in my heart of hearts, I was like, "That's a pretty lofty goal to get there." I mean, like, just tell me, Rajiv, like, did you ever envision like Indiana looking good? Sure, 8-4, 9-3. Did you ever envision like a 12-0 possibly Indiana team, or is that still just like too big for you to envision now? They still got Oregon and Penn State on the schedule.
It's way too big to envision that. It does make me sick to my stomach because I grew up in Indiana. As you see behind me, I'm a Colts fan. Like I've been around the Indiana program a long time, and they've always been the doormat of this conference. And now, like they're doing good work. They've done it is a bridge too far because Oregon and Penn State are different types of teams. And honestly, I still think Indiana's got another loss hidden in the schedule somewhere as well because they're just gonna. You could like that Iowa game really did cover up a few warts, but I think there are possibilities there. But if you want to be a 12-0 team in this conference, now again they've had a fairly weak schedule. When they play the schedule that my team has, then we'll see if they can go 12-0 or anywhere close to that because my schedule is brutal. But you have to do it for a different, like a consistent level. Do it for a few years, and then you can be talked about in that upper echelon. They're not going to go 12-0. They don't have what it takes to beat a team like Oregon. They just don't. And, if they do, I'll come on here and eat crow. That's fine. But I don't see it there for them.
That we'll have that reservation ready, Rajiv. If that happens, we'll have Rajiv.
I won't
ready
answer
on
my text
around week 14, and Rajiv is nowhere to be found for around the Big Ten after that. Darker Night, Kevin. I'll give you guys Maryland really fast for a couple more comments, and then we'll move on. Maryland's win total this season sits at 6.5 on FanDuel. Now we had thoughts of this team have not an easy schedule, but a more favorable schedule amongst some of the teams lower in the Big Ten, and said, look, if there's going to be a repeat of Indiana, we're not saying Maryland's going to the playoffs or anything like that, but they could win 7-8 games. And now with that win total sitting at 6.5, I mean, Darker Night, man, can you see this team getting to 7, maybe even 8 wins, or is that still like too preposterous for you to think of?
I mean, they're definitely on a fast track to get there. They're going to be competitive in every game. With Mike calling the plays and Malik at quarterback, I think they have the weapons outside as well to really contend. I'm not sure about their defense, how much they'll hold up against some of the upper echelon teams in the conference. So they may find themselves in a lot of shootouts. But I do believe they can contend. If Wisconsin's the toughest team they played to date, and that game really wasn't all that competitive. Sorry, Rajiv. You're just looking at it. I definitely can see some of the upper echelon teams kind of taking advantage of their youth, but they're a nice, athletic, competitive team to be as young as they are.
When you're looking at can they win 7 games in 8 games, you got a schedule watch, right? So you go to the schedule. All right, who do we got on the schedule here? Indiana at home is going to be tough. At Illinois is going to be tough. Michigan's going to be tough, right? So like you probably chalk those up. I really think it comes down to these next 2 weeks. This upcoming game against Washington, the week after against Nebraska, they're probably going to come and beat UCLA, right? And so it's like these next 2 weeks, I think really like hold a lot of the water in terms of can they for sure crack the bowl game for sure, and then like get over the top to the 7-8 win mark. And if they did, I think. I mean, look, like as I followed the Big Ten for a while, but I'm more like in the Big Ten more recently. Like September September Maryland's been a thing. It's been a thing for a while. And so, can they break that? That'll be the question.
I just want to add quickly on that Maryland thing. Like, yes, they did very handily beat our team, which was bad. I don't think they're really that good. I really don't. Like, we're bad, and we're one of the teams in the Big Ten that have lost their starting quarterback the last 3 years, and our starting quarterback did not play in this game. He played for like 3 plays, and then he was out. We had our backup who wasn't game plan. Like, we played a very bad game. We coached a very bad game, but that team has a lot of issues. And I agree with Kevin. It comes down to Washington and Nebraska. I think they lose both of those games. I think they lose to Indiana. I think they lose to Illinois. There's another tough game on their schedule. I think this team definitely ends up with maybe 6. I think 6-6, 7-5, absolute ceiling for them. Malik Washington has got a future in this league. They're not really a good team right now.
All right. Very good. We appreciate the thoughts there. I do think that Maryland fans, like, even though you're hearing that, you're like, oh man, we can't get to 7 wins. That would be great if we did. Remember, going into this season, you guys were thinking, hey, we get to 6 wins. That's a heck of an accomplishment this season with how young this team is. And I think it looks like Maryland is at worst 5-7, probably 6-6 right now, but we'll see where it goes. It's going to be really interesting as the game goes on. Hey, before we get to question 2, do want to remind you, like, subscribe. There is a hype feature now on YouTube. Look, I've never asked anybody to hype me up on YouTube before, but I'm asking you right now, shamelessly asking you, hype us up here on YouTube. It really helps out the show. I don't know exactly what it does. I think it helps out the show. It could bomb the show for all I know. I'm willing to take the risk. Hype sounds good. So please like, subscribe, hype up the show. We appreciate you doing that. Let's get on to question number 2 now. So right now, it looks like the teams with the 4 best odds in the Big Ten are Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana. Ohio State, far and away the favorite amongst everybody in college football. They are minus 2,200. Oregon, not far behind them at minus 1,800. Penn State took a little bit of a hit. They are minus 162 now on FanDuel, so a little bit closer. People are maybe not as confident in Penn State as they once were. I get it, but I still think that's pretty low odds, so you could you could find some value there if you really wanted to. And then 4th is Indiana at plus 130, so they're not favored to be in the playoffs, but they're right there. I think they're just 1 or 2 teams out at this point. Darker Knight, we'll start with you. If one of these 4 teams doesn't make it into the playoffs, who do you think that would be? And if another team in the Big Ten were to get in instead, because if the Big Ten is as good of a conference as we think, you need to get 4 teams into the playoffs. Who is that team outside of the 4 I mentioned that you think could make it in?
Yeah, great question. Out of the 4, I mean, it's tough. I can see Penn State kind of spiral after not kind of coming through in the whiteout. They still have to play. I mean, you still got to go to Columbus. You got some games that could be kind of iffy. But I mean,
yeah, you got at Iowa and Indiana on that. Like, that's a 3-game stretch right there. Yeah.
Yeah, they got some trap games built in there, and then their offense still hasn't shown that they can consistently push the ball down the field. So you get in those low scoring games or those track meets, they're kind of shown that they really struggle in them from early in the year to now. Like, they've been in some questionable close games with some fairly easy competition early in the year. So yes, they can go toe-to-toe with Oregon, but you see it comes down to the minute details, and it just seems like that staff gets really, really tense and tough moments where I can't really see them coming through. If there was going to be a surprise team to come out of nowhere and kind of make a push, I'm going to say, honestly, with their pedigree, I'm going to say Michigan. Not that I totally believe that, but they have the talent, definitely. And if they can get hot, go on a run, and like I said, that Ohio State has a tough time beating them, if they could, pull through and kind of run the table, I can see them jumping and getting in there.
I think of the 4 teams that we're looking at, Indiana, again, as we said, like, they got a couple of tough games coming up, but the fact that they've beaten Illinois now, their track record to me suggests, I agree with Rajiv, what Rajiv said, which is, like, if they're going to go up against a team that is, superior talent-wise, particularly at the line of scrimmage, I think those are the games that they struggled in last year, and those could be the ones that they struggle in this year. So those be the two games. Is there a loss the rest of the way? Maybe, maybe not. Penn State, I think, is really interesting because they got this like voodoo record, right? In these like top 10 games. And I think it's been said on like a few places how like they got two of them left. And if they lose those two, you're probably not going to have the record to get in. Now, I think they're going to beat Indiana because, again, like the makeup of Penn State seems like the kind of makeup that would go and beat in Indiana if you look at the kind of the games they lost last year. So I think that'll end up working out. But if you did have a fourth team or a surprise team to come out of there, I would pick between, and I hate that I'm doing this, but I would pick between Michigan and our crosstown rival SC. I think that game in LA is going to be pretty much an elimination game next week for any kind of surprise bids. Now, at this moment, I wouldn't pick either of them to make it. I don't think either of them are good enough. I think both of them have some pretty big flaws. And if you look kind of below the top four in the Big Ten, I could poke a lot of holes in each of these teams in terms of playoff expectations. USC, my big like knock against them, besides the obvious defense stuff, is that like Lincoln Riley, as he's gotten away from Bob Stoops, hasn't committed to running the ball. This year, they're committed to running the ball. If you watch their games, they're much more committed to running the ball. And I've been impressed with that. They lost a tough one at Illinois. I think that game's going to be basically an elimination game. On the Michigan side, again, you schedule watch. And I think the schedule watching for Michigan, it's that game in LA. And then it basically will come down to the third Saturday in November. Is that what they call it? Against Ohio State. It's going to come down to that game. And for those who don't know, I did grow up watching a lot of Michigan. I followed a lot of Michigan growing up before I went to school at UCLA and the whole thing. Right? That rivalry has always been about streaks. It streaks one way and it really struck the other way for a while. And now it's streaking the other. It might come down to that game, and who knows where the rivalry gods sit with all of that, right? So I would probably go to those two right now, but honestly, it's going to be tough, I think, for any of those teams to really break through.
Well, speaking of not wanting to be on a show, if Michigan beats Ohio State again, JR is not going to want to be someone that we talk to because that was pretty ugly.
I will be firing Ryan Day again. I did it last year. I'll be firing, and I'll come back on the next show and say, sorry, my bad.
Goodness. Yeah, I think I agree with these guys. I think the Penn State, Indiana are the two teams that you can look at. Penn State, that murderous 3-game stretch, and James Franklin doesn't win big games. We know this. This is not a surprise to anyone, and you got to be able to win those big games. Kurt Cignetti's winning those big games, so I'm gonna lean towards Penn State being out just because I do think Indiana is going to lose a couple games, but they might end up with 2 or 3 at worst, and that still probably gets them in. Penn State's got that 3-game stretch, and you have at Iowa, at Ohio State back to back, and then you got Indiana. If they lose all 3 of those games, which is a distinct possibility when you have James Franklin up there and all sort of Penn State's pedigree of sadly just losing some of those games. From a committee standpoint, it's gonna be very hard to put them in, even if even if they have 4 losses at that point, they're not getting in. Even if they beat Indiana, I think those back-to-back Iowa, Ohio State losses, they're probably going to pick up another loss along the way, whether it's Michigan State or whether it's someone else. They're probably going to get something along the way. So I would say it's Penn State. For the team that goes in, I think it's definitely Michigan. Their schedule, as Kevin said, I think it's literally USC and it's Ohio State and nothing in between. They do have a few holes on their team, like from a receiver standpoint, they're not that dynamic at the receiver position. Flip side, in the secondary, they're also not that dynamic there, but their front 7 and having Justice Haynes running the ball behind that offensive line, that is a massive weapon. And it gives Bryce Underwood all the calm in the world. He knows he's got Haynes behind him. And that's going to be really tough for any team in the Big Ten to stop, let alone the good teams. And if you look at their schedule, no one on their schedule until they play Ohio State is really going to consistently stop Justice Haynes. He's providing so much explosives for that team that now all of a sudden with Lindsey as their offensive coordinator, they're just doing things really, really smart running the ball. That's going to make them very hard to beat. I'm not saying they're not beatable. I'm hoping that we can find a way to upset them this weekend. Not going to happen. But Michigan to me, and let me tell you something, JR. I think Michigan could sneak in even potentially with those 4 teams, maybe. But it would not surprise me one bit if Michigan finds a way into that playoff because, man, can they run the ball.
Well, and if the SEC is so competitive and has so much parity that we think it does, and the playoff committee values the number of wins rather than competitiveness or something, I guess I don't know. I don't know what they're going to value. You could see Michigan finish this year 10-2, and if their two losses are to, I don't know if they lose to both of these teams or not, but USC and Ohio State, Ohio State and Oklahoma, as long as they beat USC, I'm with you, Kevin. I think that's the type of game. You win that game, you have enough games on that schedule that you should be able to make it into the playoffs, even if you lose to Ohio State, because that Ohio State team could be the number one team in the nation. And as we saw last year against Oregon, Ohio State still stayed in the top 3, even after they lost to Oregon, who was the number one team in the nation. So we'll see what the playoff committee does with it, but I think Michigan is a great pick. They're currently the next highest odds on FanDuel at plus 290. USC sits at plus 710. Washington is third out of the top 4 there. They are plus 1260. And then Illinois and Iowa both at plus 1800. And guys, forgive me, but I got to bring them up because they have odds. Not every Big Ten team has odds. Maryland with plus 3,500 odds. Kevin, don't go bet in your house on that one, okay? I know it's tempting, but don't go bet in your house on that one, okay? But yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I was kind of surprised nobody mentioned Washington. I think Washington has a little bit of a path, but that losing that game to Ohio State, we'll see what they can do on the road and everything. Darker Knight, any thoughts on Washington before we move on to question number 3?
Yeah, I didn't want to be a homer and kind of pick us, but I do believe we have an outside shot at being a dark horse. But a lot of people that aren't up here that don't know what happened in that game is we're without 6 starters in that game, so we had to play 4 true freshmen in that game. So the scheme and what we wanted to do was a little bit different, especially at, starting one guy at corner, one at safety, two starting, freshman receivers that you kind of heard their names a little bit that are going to be pretty special in a few years. So we're forcing to play guys ahead of their time just due to depth, but I do believe, we're starting to get healthy. We did lose a couple guys in that game. Hopefully we can get them back by the end of the year, but I do see a scenario where we set up for a run.
All right, we will see how it works out for Washington. Appreciate the insights there. Okay, question number 3. Before we get to it, one last thing. Going to have college football with Sam on Friday morning for a premiere episode. Me and Sam going to be going through our updated mid-season predictions for the Big Ten. So join us there. Actually, he's not going to give his. I'm just going to present mine to him, and he's going to cut it up, take it apart, throw it into the fire, and say, JR, this stinks, and tell me everything that's wrong with it. And we appreciate Sam for doing that. Okay, last question here. Kevin, we'll start with you. Who is your upset pick in the Big Ten in Week 6 and why? I'll list the odds for you really fast on FanDuel, and then Kevin, you let us know. Ohio State currently favored over Minnesota by 23.5. Nebraska, that line has dropped by 1 point. They are favored over Michigan State by 10.5. Michigan favored over Wisconsin by 16.5. Illinois favored over Purdue by 9.5. Washington favored over Maryland by 10.5. And then Northwestern, I believe last time I saw them, they were favored by 10.5. And then Penn State, their line dropped as well, favored by 24.5. Kevin, you still have your homer pick here if you want to pick UCLA to upset Penn State. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's what I'll say. I'm not one to dole out gambling advice, but if you are so inclined to listen to me on this one, I'm confused if this 24.5 is a first half point spread or the entire game. And so I think if you're looking to make some money this weekend, I think Penn State's a good bet. Now, if we go to an actual upset for the rest of this, honestly, the upsets aren't, I think, so plentiful. If we're looking at a team to take some points with, I might look at Michigan State and Nebraska. 11.5 there seems like quite a bit. And Michigan State played a pretty good game on the road. I mean, I don't think that game was actually as competitive as the score showed with SC out in LA. But Aiden Childs he looks like a player. That offense has got something. And Nebraska, I mean, there's something here that's just not right when it comes to like Dylan Raiola, the offense, and the whole thing. I think they got some stuff to them, but 11.5 seems like a lot. If you're looking to take some points, I think Michigan State's a good pick on the road there.
Yeah, I'm also not going to use my homer pick here. I don't think Wisconsin upsets Michigan. If Billy Edwards was playing quarterback, maybe, just maybe, but not going to happen. So I'm actually I followed what Kevin is saying. I think Michigan State over Nebraska is the pick. I agree completely with what he said. There's something not right with Nebraska. I appreciate what Rule has done there. I appreciate what kind of a talent Raiola is. But Nebraska's that team that just finds ways to lose games they don't need to lose. They have a very talented roster that should be performing better in the conference than they are. And while I think that they're moving in the right direction, I think Michigan State has surprised people, and they're going to continue to surprise people throughout the season. I like Kevin said, I think Aiden Childs is a good quarterback. They've got a lot of weapons on that team. They're not great, and honestly, if I had to pick any of them, I probably wouldn't, because I think the upsets are not, like he said, I think they're not really plentiful this weekend. But Nebraska, they just find ways to lose. And I think Raiola he's talented, but I just feel like their defense is going to get in the way. They're going to turn the ball over in a tough spot. And when Nebraska is in a battle, I feel like they always just come out on the losing side of these battles. They're not quite, they're a couple years away from being in that upper echelon where you can say you have confidence in them to win big games. And this shouldn't be a big game, but Michigan State has what it takes to make it a big game, make it a tight game. If that happens, I would say that. So I actually am going to take Michigan State with the points. But if I was picking an upset alert, it would definitely be that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback what Rajiv said. I mean, I think that Michigan State Nebraska game's easy money. We all say styles make fights, but styles make games too. And the teams are, have a similar playing style as far as ball control. But I trust Jonathan Smith a little bit more offensively to hit some explosives and kind of separate. Nebraska is a great story, especially being the blue blood, you want to see them back. And, college football is better when Nebraska's winning, all that type of stuff. But I just don't see enough consistency week to week to really, think that they can do that. One, in a big spot, but two, they've been really inconsistent at home, especially with, games like this where it's a must-win game. I thought this was going to be the year that they could surprise some, but I just hadn't seen enough to date. So, if I had to pick any game, there's some decent ones out there, but I'd have to choose that one.
Yeah, going to need to prove it, Nebraska, this week. I've seen a number of people kind of question that one and say, even if it's not an upset, take the points with Michigan State there, because there is some possibility. We'll see. My upset pick, and I know, Darker Knight, you're not going to like this. I apologize, but my upset pick is Maryland right now. I mean, I know Washington. I think Washington's the better team overall. Don't get me wrong. I think that Washington could be a playoff contender this year, but with the injuries, the going on the road, I am reflecting back to that Rutgers game last year, and I know Washington fans don't want to reflect on that, so I apologize, but I'm reflecting back on that game and just thinking about, they should have won that game multiple times. Now, the big X factor in this one, if Washington's going to win on the road, what do you got to do to win on the road? You got to run the ball. Maryland has stopped the run a good amount this season, but I don't think they've seen a running back like Jonah Coleman yet. I think Jonah Coleman's one of the best running backs in the nation. So if I'm going to eat my words, it's going to be because of, one, Damon Williams and his crazy athleticism, but it's going to be a lot of Jonah Coleman and what he can do. So great picks, guys. Really appreciate you coming on. Yes, Rajiv, anything else?
Yeah. I wanted to add one thing about the Maryland game. I think that line is it's a very fishy line right now. I think it's almost baiting you to take Maryland. I mean, they're a 6.5 point home dog, and it just seems like they've had a decent record. I think Washington blows them out, honestly. I don't know enough about Washington. I don't know what kind of your pass rush situation is, but if you get Malik Washington flustered, he is going to make mistakes. We just didn't have the ability to do that early in the game. We did, and he's going to be really good, but he's just not there yet. I think Washington blows that game. I think it's a 15 to 16 point victory for Washington. And I think it's actually one of my locks of the week. I do a show called Saturday Locks where I talk about betting lines. That line's super fishy. A lot of public money is going on Maryland. I'm taking the Huskies.
I'll tell you what, if the Huskies score on every drive like they did before Ohio State, I think it was, 2 drives they didn't score on before Ohio State, and both those were in the Colorado State game. If their offense explodes and goes crazy in this one, you're going to see Washington win this one pretty easy. So we'll see how that goes. All right, Thank you so much for coming on, guys. This was Around the Big Ten. We will come at you again next week. You're going to premiere at 9 a.m. on Thursdays here on the Big Ten Huddle YouTube channel. You can also catch it early in the morning on Thursday mornings on the Big Ten Huddle podcast and everything. We're going to let these guys tell you where you can find them one more time. And Rajiv, tell people about the Saturday Logs channel, man. Tell them where they get some free money at.
Yeah, so Saturday Locks, that's a brand new YouTube channel. I actually just started it a couple weeks ago. I actually used to do them on the Bucky Report channel, but I've separated it out. I'm 14-7 on the year, 66% against the spread. That's not Moneyline favorites. These are all against the spread or over and unders. Mainly do Big Ten stuff, but kind of all around college football. And then, of course, the Bucky Report, we'd go live Sunday nights on YouTube, and it's live on Twitter as well. And then Locked On Badgers for all your reaction shows. Anytime you want to watch the Badgers talk about a loss, that's where to go.
Yeah, you can find me at The Darker Knight on X or at I Am Kels on Instagram. And you can follow Sound the Siren. That's at Sound the Siren on X and at Sound the Siren on Instagram as well. Please come listen to us. It's a great show. It's a great group of guys come together each week to talk all things Big Ten, especially the Dogs. You can find us on all streaming platforms, and we'd be happy to hear your feedback.
We are at Bruinsource. You can find us on Twitter, X. We release our podcast. We try to do in the middle of the week or the early parts of the week. You can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be over there. Come check us out. There's a lot to listen to at this right now, besides what's going on the field.
If you want to know who UCLA's next head coach is, right? Go on over there to Bruinsource. I'm sure they're talking.
There's a lot more than the head coach to listen to. Come on, Bruce.
Well, and new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. I mean, there's a lot going on.
I read
over
this
there.
joke online how UCLA should just have fun with this now. Hire a coach and raise for NIL money every game. So go ahead and you get NIL money for coming and coaching every single game.
Well, there was that football league out there where you could call the plays for your team. I think you should do that. I think it's highest bidder for every play. Yeah, highest bidder for every play. All proceeds go to NIL or something. Rajiv's going to be making so much money on a Saturday Locks channel that he's going to be in there and calling inside zone for UCLA every play. Nico won't like that, but
we would value your contributions.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for being here. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.